At Dave Cooper Live, we connect the industry leaders in the architectural, engineering, and construction space with the people, the products, and the processes to help them build it better. It's the elephant in the factory. Why can't architects and modular manufacturers get on the same page? Today, we're joined by Jesse Goldman, an architect who's lived the frustration of navigating modular partnerships that just don't work. From design intent lost in translation to project goals misaligned from day one. Jesse pulls back the curtain on why collaboration between designers and modular builders and modular manufacturers keeps breaking down. If we're serious about scaling the offsite community, this conversation is long overdue. But before we get into this, we got to give a big shout out to all of our sponsors and supporting members. So first of all, thank you to Cobalt Creed. They service builders, developers, prefab home builders, and manufacturers, allowing them to achieve the highest levels of comfort, indoor air quality, and low energy costs with their HVAC systems installed for their projects and their customers. Their approach is simple. By using their proprietary small duct, high velocity central heating and cooling system. If you want to learn more, check them out at cobaltcreed.com. Now, a few words from these supporting members as well, and we'll get right into bringing Jesse on to the show. CombiLift is the largest global manufacturer of multi-directional forklifts and straddle carriers, a leader in long load handling solutions, offering a free warehouse and site optimization design service. CombiLift helps companies of all sizes and from every industry maximize the capacity, safety, and efficiency of their warehouse and storage facilities. A big thank you to Paul Short and the team at CombiLift for helping us all to build it better. Visit them at combilift.com. Forward Solutions Group is successfully driving companies to succeed where others have failed. Are you looking to start a factory, optimize your existing factory, streamline your production, or take your team to the next level? Whatever your needs are, Forward has a solution for you. Reach out to Ben at forwardsolutionsgroup.com. All right. Thank you again to all of our supporting members. We can't do any of this or all of it without their support. So, hey, if you want to support our community and have your name listed below as a supporting member and get invited to our executive events that we host, hey, our next guest actually has been to quite a few of them at this point. We'd love to have your support so we can keep bringing you these informative conversations to help you build it better. All right. So without further ado, let's bring Jesse onto the show. Jesse, how are you, my friend?
Good. How are you, Dave?
And I'm doing great. We seem to be crossing paths all across the country these days, huh?
Yeah, we do. Thanks for having me on your show. Modular brings us everywhere, doesn't it?
It's everywhere and anywhere these days, and it's growing fast. And but we got some things to fix. But before we get into that, Jess, we want to know everything about you from the moment you were born to this moment in time. Do not leave out any of the good stuff from the hospital, or we're going to have your daughter on the show, who is graduating, by the way. Congratulations. But I'm sure she'll embarrass the daylights out of you with the good stuff if you don't give us all. But you only got a minute and a half to do it, and then let's get into what you're doing.
All right. Well, fantastic. It was a Tuesday, if I remember correctly. Uh, but that aside, as I grew up, I always knew I love to build stuff. I love to do puzzles. I love to put things together. And, it was about when I was 8 years old when I decided I wanted to be an architect. And that dream never faded away from me. And so I spent my life learning about that and becoming an architect, and I got into a lot of different commercial projects. And then at some point, I had an opportunity to work on a shipping container project, and I just really loved that next level of complexity that went along with that. And that's what steered me down a path of working on modular projects and learning how we could use offsite construction to better serve our clients and better serve the community around us as well. So that's been my little journey getting to where I am today.
So how long have you been at CSHQA? That's a mouthful, right?
It is a mouthful. I've been at CSHQA for about 6 years now, but we're a 136-year-old firm.
Yeah, and how many employees, architects, designers, team members do you have?
We have about 120 team members right now, of which approximately 90 is professional staff.
90 is professional staff. And you have a big focus on retail and commercial, correct?
Yes, we're primarily retail commercial.
Yeah.
In Boise, California, and Denver, and Dallas.
Got it. So with that said, I mean, you guys have been, into this modular construction, container construction, just, basic offsite in general, right? Where it makes sense. Walk us through why the firm and yourself have decided that, this is, the way forward for you guys, or at least part of the solution.
Yeah, it's really part of the solution because it makes sense for a lot of clients. We want to find the best strategies possible for our clients, and knowing how to utilize modular and where it makes the best sense to fit in, we can really solve a lot of problems for our clients when it's appropriate. And I think we're finding more and more scenarios in our world that modular or any sort of offsite has an impact or a role within projects.
Yeah. So last time, well, actually it wasn't the last time, second to last time, we were at Advancing Prefab and you were hosting a panel, if I recall. I was sitting there watching with architects and designers talking about offsite construction, modular construction, and the hurdles that everybody was facing. And there is a lot of them. In your mind, since you've already done several projects, and big projects, where are you seeing the breakdown between, modular construction, offsite construction, and the architects?
Well, it's interesting. There's quite a few places where breakdowns happen, but I think the most traditional area where a breakdown is happening right now is we need to have, as designers, a pencil down moment. And that is not something we're used to as designers. I mean, we're drawing up till the end. It's under construction. We're still making changes. Owners are still making changes. Designers are still making changes. But in the modular world, all of that needs to be figured out well ahead of time. A lot of times that design pencil downs moment needs to even happen before we do the construction drawings, definitely before the shop drawings. So lots more decision-making process has to be made up front, and we have to adhere to our decisions as well. And that's a lot of where I'm seeing a lot of the struggle right now is we'll make a decision, but then want to go back and touch on it 6 months later when it's under construction. And that just is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I mean, you've done so many projects. Give me an example of a project you guys worked on where, this was happening. And I'm assuming it was in some of the early projects.
Oh yeah, and a lot of times this happens even with like prototype work, because we do a lot of prototype work, and where a project will be half constructed on the factory floor, and it could be a design change, it could be an owner related change, but I've seen where we're taking a tour of that project, and no, we need to change this, we need to change that, we're moving sinks, we're moving plumbing, we're moving these things have massive implications down the road when that stuff is changing during construction.
Yeah, and for those of you that are watching this that want to learn about modular, pencil down means, hey, listen, we need to put this on a production line in a factory. And when you make changes, it stops the line, which stops the factory, which causes all kinds of headaches. Decisions need to be made up front to have a successful project, period.
Yeah, stopping that factory line costs a lot of money for the factory, and then therefore the owner, the client, because that labor is there and ready to work, and you need to keep that line moving. That is the most critical thing you can do for modular to be successful.
Do you find that it's on the factory side or the architect side? Like where's the breakdown happen? Because I mean, things do change, right? Especially you design something, you send it to a factory, they put it into their system, and then all of a sudden, sometimes you're sharing a file with them, or they redline a file, they send it back to you, and then the factory goes, "Oh, well, you gave us your information, but here we're redoing it this way, and here sign here so you accept the things we changed, whether you caught it or not." Right?
Right. I think it happens all around. So it's a matter of having a team that can communicate well, because, if you think of a simple like RFI, request for information, that would happen during a traditional site build, an architect may have a week, even sometimes 2 weeks, to respond to that RFI and to research and solve that RFI issue. And so that's the traditional cadence. When we're talking about a factory line, we may need to take that number down from a week to an hour at some points, because we're trying to keep the line moving. And that's where we get into a case where the factory just may make a decision and move on that may have other implications, or we as architects and designers don't answer quick enough, and it stalls the process as well.
Yeah, and it does, right? Because your contract usually with your client, and then you have another contract that's with the modular manufacturer. Is that how it works? So
it works. This is another level of complexity too. There's no standard way it works, right? So I've worked on many projects where I have a contract with the client, and then they have a contract with the manufacturer. So I'm independent of that factory component. In many other cases, the client goes out and hires the manufacturer, and then the manufacturer brings me on to create their drawings that they're utilizing to even submit to the state, or sometimes even for their shop drawings. And so at that point, I'm beholden to the factory.
Right. And when you're working with the factory, do you just use one factory, or depends on where the project is, determines which manufacturer you're going to, work with?
Early when I started this, we were working primarily with one factory, but we branched out now, and we work with a whole lot of different factories. And, we try and find the factory that's going to be best for the client, for the project type, and think about transportation as well. Obviously, when we don't have to transport something clear across the country, we don't want to, but sometimes that's the best factory to build the product.
Right. Tell me about the product itself. Retail. You guys are doing coffee shops. You're shipping bars and containers. So I've already put my name in for one of those.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about the type of modular projects that you guys are really focused on.
Yeah, so we're doing a lot of retail work right now. We're doing a lot of coffee shop work. We've done a tremendous amount of restaurant work, QSR, quick serve restaurants, anywhere from pizza locations, bars, kiosks, and then some retail locations for traditional selling of products, whether it be clothes or something else. We've done shipping container projects. We've done wood volumetric, steel volumetric, and panelized projects now. And they all have their own unique limitations and capabilities, but we can do a whole lot of different things with these different varieties.
So in the offsite space, there's a big focus on residential housing, multifamily housing. You're doing a ton of, like you said, retail type environments in space. Is that challenging for you? Is there enough manufacturers out there for this work?
Yeah, I think there are enough manufacturers out there for this work. I think part of the challenge comes in when we're doing a repeat product like say a coffee shop. When we switch factories, which has happened multiple times in the past, you have to understand the limitations of that factory and what that factory is capable of. And now we're even getting to the point where some of the factories have certain patents on their systems that they're using and their details, which then has an implication on our entire design at some points. When they're building their frames differently than everybody else, or building their wall panels different than everybody else, we have to understand how that impacts. It's not just as easy as the client saying, you know, I have factory X, now I want factory Y. There's a domino effect in making that decision.
So what you're saying is not all the factories that do modular build the same as every other factory. So it could be floor framing, it could be balloon framing, it could be wood, it could be steel. You know, walk me through some of the differences.
Absolutely. So, you know, the most obvious right there is the wood versus the steel. Some factories are set up for wood and some are set up for steel. And it's based on the tools they have, the knowledge of their tradespeople within the factory, and just their general way that they're set up. So wood and steel always has a little bit of an implication, but now we're even seeing things where some factories have developed their own wall panel types, and which has its own complication, but also its own benefit to them. We've seen factories with their own structural steel detailing that we then have to make sure we integrate with our structural engineer, understand it, how it works, how it calcs out. And once we figure that out, if we go to another factory, some of these are brilliant ideas, but we can't necessarily use them as we carry on.
So it's interesting, right? Because the factory has done their own engineering on their wall system and their products. You have your own in-house engineers, architects, landscapers, the whole 9 yards. But why can't it be used?
Well, some of it's like a patent, or it's a proprietary system that they don't want other factories to use. They're not sharing those details.
Understood.
We may be under an NDA so that we cannot share those details, or, you know, they're copyrighted.
Mm-hmm. So then that limits you and almost pigeonholes you to have to either stay with that factory or start over at another manufacturer, is what you're saying.
Absolutely. That's definitely one of the challenges, is how we can come together as a community to advance the industry.
Give me some examples on how that could happen.
You know, we're definitely looking at, as a community, I think this is happening more in the multifamily space right now, just because there's more multifamily modular happening than other types, but how the connections, the plumbing connections, and some of these utilities, sprinkler connections, how we can standardize those components and the testing of those components between the factory and the field, and between different factories, so that everybody is using the same system. And that way, the trades on the ground, your local GC who's fabricating and putting the building together, their local subs also know how these components go together with standard systems. And so that is starting to happen, but I think we have a long ways to go in really perfecting and having that communication between the local GC, the factory, and the standardized systems between all the factories.
So I mean, this is an interesting topic, right? Standardization between the manufacturers. Right now, we're going to get into code issues here with some of this stuff, right? I mean, yeah, that really would make a lot of sense, because then the architects and designers and the teams out there could, it just opens the door for all the modular manufacturers to be able to bid on your work because they're working in the same process. Now, the problem is that would mean retooling their factories, which could cost, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands, millions of dollars, depending on the manufacturer. So you get kind of stuck in the middle, and then we're all trying to work within in a code book that is made for site building, right? In the factories, we're not site builders, so there's a whole lot of like black matter in the middle of this.
Right, and we're working in a code book that, while it may be the international building code, is local to every jurisdiction out there with their own amendments. And
right,
well, this jurisdiction's under this year, and this one's under this year, and this one has these amendments. So it's never the same across the board, which is a whole nother layer of challenge.
Right. Could you imagine if iPhone or Mac computers or cars or airplanes all had to fall under an international code, or international as in regards to the United States, right? Mm-hmm. Or then let the states dictate what they can and can't do on each section of their phone or their iPhone? Like, that'd be insane, wouldn't it?
Well, and down to even the city level, not even the state level, the city or the local municipality having its own interpretation of those rules as well.
Yeah. Well, this has been a conversation that's kind of been stifling the growth of offsite construction in general, just not modular. But I do think a standardized system, or at least if, in the retail market or commercial market where you guys focus, would make a lot of sense for manufacturers maybe to come together and sit down and actually have a real conversation, because it just opens, they're not going to lose business. They're going to open the door to more business.
Absolutely.
It's easier and more accessible versus, oh, I got a wall system, right, that I'm protecting my IP on. Okay, great. So you're protected. You got a patent on it, because if you do, it's protected. But outside of that, you know how many times I've heard that? And I go to factories all around the world, and I walk in like, yeah, I've seen this system before. And and it's not in just one factory. It's in a lot of factories.
Absolutely. Yeah. They're definitely using each other's details, but to what extent and how you regulate that is very difficult.
Yeah. So that's nothing that we're fixing anytime soon, right?
No, probably not.
This is the grandeur plan of, hey, if we had our wish list and people wouldn't fight so hard to protect their little space, codes and everything else. What does a successful relationship between an architectural firm such as yours, and really for other architects to understand this, and a manufacturer look like, and where should people start with this?
Well, making sure that there's a clear understanding of scope right from the beginning. When we work with different manufacturers, understanding who is actually going to be submitting the state drawings versus the city drawings, who's going to be producing the shop drawings, to what level our drawings need to get produced to for them. If they're producing their own shop drawings, what level we need to get to, and just that open communication and clear path forward and clear scope of work is really important, because then that defines the future scope of work and how you set up the scope of work for the actual construction, what's going to be done in the factory, what's going to be done in the field by the local GC. And, so that it's really two independent scopes of work, and making sure that it all comes together for a successful product in the end.
100%. So, all right. So we talked about the ups and downs of dealing from being an architect and a manufacturer. Let's talk about some benefits, right? Mm-hmm. The solution itself for your clients. Walk us through the benefits of the solution that you see. And, is there, after now you've done several projects, is there a true return on investment?
Sure. So, consistency is key, right? When we're working on these projects, it is great for a client to know that they're going to get the same product and have this over and over again. So working with a factory to get that is important, but the ROI really comes from speed. That's where your money savings is going to be. It's not on the actual construction itself. Can you save money on the construction? Sure. But by designing it differently, there are ways to save, but it's the speed. And I think the best example of that was, one of the dominoes we worked on, they finished the foundation and the building was open and serving pizza about 3 weeks later after the foundations were done. And that was really, a lot of that time was due to health department review and the final reviews on the building that took most of that time, because we were able to set the building, set the walk-ins, set the RTUs, and essentially walk away from that project. So that speed is incredible. And when you're not having to spend 3 extra months, 6 extra months on construction, and you can be selling your product, that's where the ROI is.
Yeah, I mean that is fast, right? I mean, because it's all about speed to market, heads on beds, depending on what you're building. And I think this has always been the big question. In fact, we had another architect on not too long ago, and we were talking about the same thing where, you can't compare apples to apples. You can't compare an upfront cost from a site-built project from a GC to an offsite project, because you got to holistically look at the entire thing to include the amount of money somebody's going to get back and to include the quality control that you have. Because let's face it, the labor force out there isn't what it used to be. The skill isn't what it used to be. There's some quality assurances that go into this, as well as insurance savings and everything else, less time, less disruption. What's your thoughts on all that?
Yeah, I mean, quality is key. And, being able to build in a 70-degree factory year round and not worry about the rain or worry about anything else, you can't beat that. I don't know why anybody would not do that, where you only ever have to get on a ladder, but you never have to get on scaffolding, right? It's safer, it's controlled. So that is critical to making this process move forward.
No, it is critical in that. And what about cost, savings, like overruns and more control over what the number truly means?
Right. You have more control over your costs because there's an early buyout, and there's your bill of materials is figured out way earlier in modular. So you really understand that. But what's key, and what I've seen as a problem, and this is something we need to address, and I know we're kind of talking about problems today, is that coordination and communication on the drawings and with the site GC to understand what their actual scope is. And this is a lot of times where we've seen cost overruns that can get out of control. So a perfect example of this is the local subcontractor in electrical engineer not understanding how they need to tie module A to module B and module B to module C, and what their home runs look like, what wire is already going to be there versus not be there. And if they don't understand that based on the drawings they're getting from the team, they're going to pad their numbers to take care of themselves without knowing. And that's uniform across all the subcontractors. So it's very important to be clear and concise about exactly what they need to provide, because that's where you'll see this cost increase, and you're paying for the same product twice at that point as a client.
Yeah, 100%. And offsite construction, modular construction, in its finest form, are really good for step and repeat type customers, like the coffee shops. I'll show an example. Here's Panera. I'm not sure if that was modular or not, but the retail locations, banks, pizza shops, Domino's, like you mentioned. If it's a step and repeat product, once it's in the system, it's in the system. You just rock and roll from here on out, right?
Correct. I mean, that makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. I mean, listen, foundation's in, 3 weeks later, I'm serving coffee and eating pizza. Yeah. Who doesn't want that? That doesn't happen on a site project ever.
Ever. No. And, it's hard to make happen on a modular project. You have to really make sure everything is coordinated and everybody's on the same page. That's the only way that's going to happen.
So let's talk about how a project that you would be working on actually flows, right? So you have a client that comes to you, and it's an existing client. You got all the trades. You got MEP, right? You got the plumber, the HVAC, the MEPs, the electrician, the manufacturer. You got yourself, and your team designing and pulling all this stuff together. How important is it to have that team at the table in the beginning, reviewing where the conflicts are? And then are you using programs like a BIM software and others to actually visually see this in 3D?
Yeah, so to answer the second part first, we do everything in Revit. We model everything because we want to see as many conflicts as we can from the beginning and make sure that we understand where every beam sits, where the plumbing sits, where the HVAC sits, and get that conflict avoidance out of the way. I like to have as many of those people at the table from the beginning as we can. Now, a lot of times we don't have the local GC or their subs, unfortunately, in that process early on. And we need to then educate them to exactly what they're doing. We need to educate them through our drawings and through communication about what is required of them so that they can pass that on to their subs and get appropriate pricing. But when you're working with a local GC who's never done this before, that process takes a lot of hand holding, and you want to make sure it can be done. And there's effective ways in your drawings to help show that information. Like we use colored sets for everything now to help clarify and communicate who and what that scope is associated with.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been seeing that a lot, right? The colored plans, the numbered plans, there's all these different ways of doing this now.
Yeah.
And you're right, for the new GCs out there, it's different, right? Because where your job begins for your trades and where their job ends for the trade is much different. And it's not less work for them. It just allows them to do more work and more jobs, right? Because a lot of this stuff is actually happening in a manufacturing environment. And that's a big misconception a lot of trades have. Oh, well, I'm losing work. I don't want to work with a modular, right? This is my income, ... But meanwhile, you're either stuck on one project for, a year or 2 years or 3 years, or you could be working on 5 projects a year, reducing your liability, reducing the risk of having to have, 100 different electricians on your staff when you can now get it done with 20. There's all these benefits that people don't look at. You agree?
Absolutely, I agree. And, it's about coming together and finding the right solution for the project. Modular is not for everything, and we're not taking work away from anybody. We're allowing you to go out and get the work that you want to get. And
right.
It's actually a win-win when you look at it through the right lens.
Yeah, well, and it is. And again, this comes down to the education and the training. We're not seeing this at architect schools yet. Maybe there's a few out there that are starting to teach this, but they're still behind when they come out on where we truly are with technology and building these days.
Absolutely, and that's what makes it kind of exciting too. We're on the verge and the start of this new. I say new, but it's been out there for quite some time. But it's slow to adopt construction type. And so just being part of it and pushing it every day is exciting and, helping the industry grow.
Yeah. Do you think you guys will stay focused on the retail and commercial space?
I think, yeah, my team will definitely stay focused on that. We are doing a little bit in the multifamily world and some different housing projects that we've been looking at. And we've also looked at hospitality projects through the RBIA code as well. So we're branching off into these different realms, but I want to always have a modular presence in our team, in our studio.
Yeah. And what's your pipeline looking like? And this is good for other architects and firms out there. Is how is the offsite pipeline, and are you having to sell this, or are people coming to you?
It's a little bit of both. When there are clients who are very curious and open about modular, we do find them coming to us. But there are plenty of clients that we have that we can see where modular may benefit them. And so we're able to educate them and sometimes get them to work, to try and ultimately go after modular and work on modular projects.
Yeah. In your mind, if you could wave your magic wand other than having a standardized system, what is a piece of low hanging fruit that you wish you could change with modular manufacturers from an architect standpoint?
Um, you know, it's really the modular manufacturer wants to design one thing and have repeatability. That is where they're going to make the most money. And the designer and the client always wants something different, right? So I think that's where we're always going to be in a little bit of odds. So it's about, if I could wave my magic wand, it would be to create a system that has these standardized components, but allows for flexibility in the design. Where
Mhm.
if the module is 30 feet long or 60 feet long, whatever it is, where the factory doesn't worry about that because they're using the same system to build it, but allowing the designer the flexibility to do what's correct for the site and for the client as well. And that's that unity that I think will really help uh, bring both sides together over time.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's like the configurator, right? Where you can actually, preload all of the elements or your kit of parts. And I know you guys are working on kit of parts
Yep.
yourself. Um, and if you have this kit of parts, out there in the cloud or in house, what have you, then really architects and designers can just plug and play and design all they want as long as they're playing within the kit of parts.
Yeah, absolutely. The defined set of rules that
Yeah.
make it possible.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Do you see AI helping in helping? Do you see, how do I say this without saying helping five times? Do you see AI helping in helping this process of standardization and in kit of parts? I mean, eventually, I think it could almost you could probably load 1,000 projects in, and AI could figure out that kit of parts for you.
Yeah, I think AI will definitely help make this possible. What I think, really, where I think AI is going to have the most impact is as factories start to adopt it with their details and their construction types. That
Right.
might help solve that, because then we can load a project into AI and allow it to be modified for their construction type, their details, their jig tables, all the pieces that are about that factory, and instantly bring it to their standards. And then we can design one coffee shop and send it to 4 different factories, and they would all have it configured for the way they built.
Yeah. Are you going to have that done this year?
Absolutely. We're actually having AI build that AI software to do that.
Isn't that funny? AI is building AI. That
Yeah.
doesn't even make sense. Yeah. I don't have a brain big enough to try and figure that one out. So you are working with AI. Tell me about technology and just your architectural firm. Like, is it something you are embracing? And what would you say to companies out there or other architects, whether you're a single architect out there designing or working a large firm like you guys have? What advice would you give them with keeping up with technology and offsite construction?
Well, you have to keep up with technology, right? Otherwise, you're going to be left behind. And just like you have to keep up with modular construction, it is going to be a prevalent part of our future,
Yeah.
just as AI is going to be a prevalent part of our future. And we have to learn how to work with it, not against it. We have to learn how to accept it. AI is going to be, and all technology is our partner. It's not here to replace any of us. It's our partner in becoming better. And once you understand that, and once you understand it's not here to replace you, I think we're all going to get along better with it, and be able to use it in a more impactful way.
Yeah, no, I agree. So if I were to summarize this conversation that we're having, right? Modular and offsite construction isn't without its headaches, nor is site built construction, right? There's changes,
Correct. They all have headaches.
they all have it. But the value that you're starting to realize and the ROI that your clients are realizing is in the speed to market and in the controlled atmosphere. They know exactly what they're getting because it's inspected over and over again. And then they have your design firm also inspecting it, right?
Yeah.
Am I missing anything with that?
Well, I mean, it is quality. You know, we build these buildings also tougher, stronger. They have to drive down the road. They don't just have to get erected on the site. So, you know, as we're seeing, you know, different things happen in our climate, larger storms, bigger rainstorms, wind, these buildings are built stronger, and that's going to have an impact as well for the clients as well, because this building was meant to drive down the road, was meant to fly through the air and be set down. That's a positive outcome for our clients as well.
And they're really not limited on what they can have, are they?
No.
I mean, there's some design, like there's manufacturing limitations, but it's just a matter of how you work the structure to give them what they want, right?
Absolutely, because you know, with the integration and the hybrid projects between modular and panelized and, you know, wood, steel, we can come together.
Yeah.
We're looking at CLT now in modular, and you know, we have modulars with concrete floors now, and you know, there's a lot of stuff out there that you would think would be limited to site construction that's really not.
I will tell everybody out there, you don't even know it, but I guarantee you're in modular coffee shops. You know, if you're on the East Coast here, if you know Wawa and some of those, they're all going modular now. You know, Dunkin' Donuts is even modular. Oh, here's one everybody knows. Chick-fil-A is doing modular. So for those of you watching this out there, unless you walked in and looked at a Chick-fil-A and goes, oh, this is built like shit, I doubt it, right? It's quality stuff, and I think it's good stuff too. So, all right, Jess, what am I leaving out? Like, what's the one thing? Am I missing anything you want to talk about?
You know, the only last thing that I would always want to push in the modular industry, and if we're going to talk about failures and maybe opportunities, is, you know, we always need to be pushing the lending, the banking industry, and teaching them about modular as well. I've had so many projects fall apart because of financing in the past. And it's that idea that the factory wants to buy out the entire project before they start construction. So there's not a foundation in the ground when they're buying the toilets and the paint and everything else. And, you know, when you're a client and you're asking for a draw from the bank to pay for all that, because you're putting a deposit in with the factory, banks typically don't like that. And so it's about educating, you know, all parts of the construction industry. That lending piece is so critical and so vital to our industry progressing. I think that's the one piece I would also add that I would love to see change in that realm going forward as too.
Well, I tell you what, let's make that change happen. That is something we can do. We could bring the CEOs of the banks together with the industry leaders like yourself and the manufacturers, and we could really start having some real dialogue on this, because you're right, it is an issue. Now, there are lenders out there that do these projects, and they understand the value of the projects, and they assess the risk that they take with the manufacturer, longevity, how much profitability. Like, you know, it's like anything else when you're trying to do this. So, but the other side is nobody's stealing their copper pipes on site.
Right. There's a lot of benefits to it as well. And, you know, they're getting paid back on that loan sooner. You know, they're converting it from a construction loan to a traditional loan sooner. So there's a lot of benefits as well. But we do need more banks on board with this. You know, we can't have a limited number. We need our clients, because our clients don't always have access to those banks or know what banks are providing that funding. And a lot of times that's one of the first people the clients talk to is the bank. Well, before the GC, the architect, the factory, they're talking to the bank.
Yeah, in fact, they've already secured a commitment from the bank to do their project, and now they're shopping the designers and the factories or whatever.
Right, and they have no idea if that lender is going to allow modular or not at that point.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think that's something we can work on as an industry fairly easily if we came together. I mean, it's always been a topic, but hey, we should put that at the front of the line. Let's make money easier to get. I like easy money.
I do too.
Yeah. No, good. Hey, well, listen, if the money's in place and it allows projects to move forward, everybody feels comfortable. Everybody works as hard as they can to earn that paycheck. And that's the value there, right?
Absolutely.
Cool. Jess, thank you so much for coming on the show today, man. Really,
thank
really
you for having me. It's been wonderful.
It is wonderful. And guess what, Jess? It's Monday. We still got 4.5 days to keep building it better.
All right.
Beginning of the week. It's not even hump day yet. So don't get too excited and do not leave until I'm done with my program, people out there. But I will tell you that, these conversations that we're having, especially with yourself, Jess, and others, have been absolutely amazing. How's our events been? You've been to a couple of our executive events. Is it the right level of people at these events?
Yeah, your events are great. They're really top notch, and I definitely appreciate going to them whenever I have the opportunity.
Well, and I hope you get value out of it. It's about getting value. It's not about us selling something.
Yeah,
that's what it's about. So good. I'm happy to hear it. Jess, thank you so much. And thanks again to all of our supporting members, that you're seeing going across the bottom of the screen there. We can't do this without all of you supporting us. If we're going to keep it live, real, and unedited, and for the industry and about the industry, this is how we do it. We don't get in bed with the devil. That's what we tell everybody. Jess, don't go anywhere. I'll come back to you after the outro. But for the rest of you out there, remember, it's Monday. Get back to building it better, and make sure you start looking at Jess and CSHQA architects and others that are out there that are already using this technology to build your structures and help you sell your pizzas and coffee and everything else a lot faster. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching. What an amazing show. Thank you to all of our sponsors for helping us to continue to bring all of these innovative conversations to all of you out there. Please visit them, see what they have to offer you. And as always, subscribe to the YouTube channel and ring that bell. It would mean the world to us. I'm Dave Cooper. Thanks for watching.